Hey there, it's Mary Claire. I'm going to talk about something today that's really controversial. To me, it's something that's blatantly obvious and people don't get it, kind of to me, because they don't want to. People just don't like to think about things that make them uncomfortable. They like to reject them outright so that they don't have to do any thinking about it whatsoever. But if people would think through these things, then I think there would be a different consensus. But I guess we'll see. So it is controversial, and I want to state up front that I'm a trafficking victim, as in I was sex trafficked as a child. I was also used as a drug mule. So I know about trafficking. And so I'm not downplaying trafficking. In fact, I'm trying to show um, when I say these other things are trafficking, I'm saying that to show how serious this is. And like I said, these ideas that people resist. So before I get into that, I think I'm going to say the one thing that goes along with this topic that people don't like either. If all the people that believe abortion is murder because of the Bible or whatever else were really consistent, they would also be against IVF for the same reason. You can't like if it's a child at the moment of conception and therefore having an abortion is murder. So manipulating circumstances via IVF would be just as immoral, right? But a lot of people don't see it that way. I know somebody who got very angry at me when they cheered about the fall of Roe v. Wade, but they had had a child via IVF and were trying to have another child via IVF, and they were throwing a fit saying, well, the ruling done this way in this state means that I can't even have IVF. And I said, well, you shouldn't. If you believe that abortion is murder, you shouldn't be doing IVF either. It's inconsistent. And she got angry at me and she said, how dare you? You're so cruel. I deserve children too. You have children, so it's easy for you to say. I said, no, 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 no. I said, this is about morality. You said abortion is murder because it's a child at the moment of conception. So it's a child at the moment of conception with IVF too, correct? Because if it's not, then you're not being consistent and you're really just full of shit. But she got angry. She no longer talks to me, which it really wasn't a loss. It wasn't like she was a friend of mine, but it was a person that was like, I don't want you to be able to have what you need, but me, I should have it because it's cruel to not let me be a parent. My thing is, when we want to talk about things that are natural or unnatural, I was able to have children, but why are we trying to play God in who wants to who is able to have children and who isn't? Like, why are we doing that? It's not like, I get that it really hurts to not be able to have children, but that isn't the fault of parents. It's not our fault that you were not able to have children. And if you don't want a woman who has been able to conceive a child, if you don't want her to be able to abort it because you say that that's playing God and murder, you can't expect to have the same. So it's one of those things that I felt like I said this to somebody when they said that gay rights was important. You know, Gay and lesbian people deserve to be able to be married, and I agree with that. Very pro LGBTQ in my family. I mean, in my family, as in me and my kids. Not, it's not that way with the grandparents, unfortunately. But the point was, is they were fighting for their children to be able to be married, and they were afraid that gay marriage would be taken away, which was a serious concern. I think it probably still is, but at the same time, this father refused to acknowledge trans rights. And I said, okay, so it's all for me and fuck thee. And he said, no, 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 no. He said, it's different. I said, how's it different? You know, it's like, well, being trans is playing God. So, you know, and this was another person who believed abortion was murder. So it was like, come on now, you either want rights for everybody or you don't. So, he didn't like that either. But I back off a lot these days, but, I tend to be pretty out there with how I think about something, even if people don't like it. They don't have to like me. They don't have to like what I'm saying. Some people like talking to me, even though they don't necessarily agree with what I'm saying. And that's kind of how we get to hear other viewpoints. And but he was not having it. So anyway, so that's the part of the abortion rights that you know, if women aren't allowed to have abortions because it's immoral, then so is IVF. And that ties into the rest of this topic about trafficking. So, my very unpopular second opinion, because we've already talked about abortion and IVF, is that adoption, IVF, and surrogacy are human trafficking. Here's why. You don't get to buy and sell human beings. If you believe that it's a human being at conception, you don't get to purchase them. Children are not products. So if you're exchanging money, sure, maybe some of the money you pay in an adoption is an adoption fee or IVF fees or whatever. That is still paying, that is still purchasing a human being. And this is wrong. It's what makes slavery wrong, because slavery is also the buying and selling of human beings. Sex trafficking is the buying and selling of human beings for the purposes of sex. Like, you can't just pick and choose here. Exchanging money and getting a child is a purchase. And if you're purchasing a person for your own purposes, your own uses, that's trafficking. Even if you want to be a loving parent to them, you still bought them. And I don't know. I have seen a lot of people that were adopted that when they grew up have been upset that they were adopted. Not because they hated the adoptive parents, but because they felt like adoption in itself was wrong. But of course, I don't know a lot of people that were adopted that I know as adults. I know a lot of, I know quite a few people that have been adopted in the fundamentalist world, and I mean, some of that is really severe. Some of them have gone overseas to purchase a child, adopt a child, but, you know, purchase them, really. Have gone overseas, gotten, and they told me back in the day, and they'll tell other people this, that, oh, they're going to get a child because they need help on the farm, so we'll get a good, strong boy to help us on the farm. Or another one of them said, well, if it doesn't work out, we can just marry her off. Now, they were talking about a teenage girl, I think she's about 12, 13. Well, she can be married in a year or two if it doesn't work out. Things like that. I have seen this happen personally. It's really fucked up. I couldn't do anything about it. I still can't do anything about it, but it's really fucking horrible. The reasons that people will say for why they did, in particular, overseas adoptions. So, you know, essentially, this one person went to China, exchanged money for a child, and brought that child back, essentially as a farmhand, so a slave. They purchased a slave. This is human trafficking. Some of them have adopted children. I'm talking in the really hardcore fundamentalist Christian world. Some of them will adopt from like Romania or Ukraine or China. They'll bring these children back. They'll mistreat them. I have known of, I didn't know them. If I had known them, I would have called CPS, because I might have been afraid to call even back in the day, but I wouldn't have let this go. So these particular children, the parents brought them to the U.S., And then the children didn't behave the way they wanted these children to behave, and so they locked them outside in a dog kennel at night, in a dog crate. Sometimes it was in the snow, sometimes it was in the heat. So these kids essentially lived outside like animals because the parents couldn't essentially force this whole born again Christian nonsense on them. And the kids wouldn't cooperate with homeschooling. So if they were going to act like animals, they were going to be treated like an animal. And very shortly after that, the little girl turned 14, which was you can legally marry a child when they're 14 if there's consent by parents and a judge. And so this girl got married off to someone, I want to say he was like 35 or so. That is definitely trafficking. That is definitely wrong. That is rape. The child couldn't consent. The child was brought from another country. They come to the U.S. They can't speak the language. Their new life sucks. Then they get sent with a man twice their age, and over twice their age even sometimes, and they're forced to act as if they're married to this man. And so that there is no other way to describe that. But even a regular adoption, even a domestic adoption, if you are exchanging money and getting small human, that's trafficking. You bought them. There is no nice delicate way to say that. You bought a child. It is sad if you want a child and you can't have a child. That doesn't give you the right to go purchase one. It just doesn't. Like, just because awful things have happened to you doesn't mean you get to go and do awful things to other people. And that's what a lot of what is wrong in this world, it happened to us, or it's cruel to say that we can't have children. I'm very sorry you can't have children if you wanted children. I really am. But again, it doesn't mean you can do something horrible to a child in order to obtain them. There are ways of taking care of children who lose their parents. They can live with relatives, perhaps, or live in group homes, or even live in a regular family like a foster family without being bought. You don't have to adopt them. You don't have to purchase them. Can't you have them live with you without claiming ownership over them? Because they're not merchandise. This isn't a little thing that you own and you can stand it up over here like a statue by the front door out in the garden. That's not how this should work. And yet it is. And I understand that that's very controversial, but it's only controversial because people don't want to think this thing through. And the reason they don't want to think this thing through is they're worried that it's true. And if they don't think about it, it means that it's not true because they didn't take the time to consider it. So that's all I really have for today. I know this video is a little shorter than the videos that I have been doing, but I really wanted to say something about this. I'm going to be writing something about it soon. I know it's controversial. I don't know or care if that's good or bad. People either listen and read or they won't. And that's kind of what's happening now anyway. It's not like I'm going to be losing income here because I'm barely making any. So, all things can do really is get better. So, I guess I'm at the point where, because there's no real consequence as far as losing income and notoriety, because I don't have either, I can kind of still say whatever the fuck I want to say, and be true to exactly who I am and what I think. So anyway, I hope that you guys will think about that some if you never have, and just see where you come to on it. Alright, have a good night. Bye.